This is a video I've debated making for just about 2 years now. For those who follow this channel, you probably saw a mention of it in the last couple of years that my mom passed away, and it's been 2 years and a couple days since she passed. And as we were going through the process of losing my mom to dementia, I experienced a lot and learned a lot. And throughout that experience, I kept thinking, it's so hard to understand this process, and it's so painful. And I thought there was also so much that would be helpful for other people to hear about, to understand when and if they need to navigate dementia in a parent. I am not an expert in dementia. I'm not going to tell you how to fix really anything if you have a parent with dementia. My intention with this video is just to share some of the things that happened, some of the things I learned, I guess some of the pain I still experience, and some of the perspectives that maybe will help somebody else who's going through the same painful loss. So, in this video, I'm just going to talk with you about what happens when your mom dies of dementia. And when I say your, obviously, I just mean mine. So she did die about 2 years ago. But my brother and I started losing her years before. She started reporting in her 40s that her brain was slowing down. She started saying that she couldn't remember things, that her mind was going. And I was pretty dismissive of it for a long time, and I told her, use Post-it notes, just there's ways to organize your life, use a planner, whatever, you can get over this, just set up some structures. And I was also, for a good portion of time, pretty distant from my mother because, just basic life things. We didn't always see eye to eye on things. She tried to be controlling because she's an older school Asian, Chinese immigrant mom, even though she was very progressive for a Chinese immigrant parent. She still wanted to control certain aspects of my life and would annoy me with constant questions about things like, are you cold? Do you need a jacket? Even though I'm a 30-year-old man and I can tell when I'm cold. But, just like little petty things that can bother you as a son when your mom just can't let go of you as a baby. It wasn't always conflicted when I was a child. I used to wake up every morning calling for her. I wouldn't even get out of bed until she came to the room and gave me a hug so I could get out of bed. And if she didn't come to the room to get me out of bed, I would stomp through the house looking for her, angry that she didn't come to me. And then when I found her, I'd drag her back to the room and tell her to hug me so that I could get up and start my day. But yeah, over time, as I got older, as life changed, especially after college, I started seeing like she had a pretty nervous and anxious personality. It didn't help that, she and my dad did not get along. My dad was definitely old school Chinese immigrant parent, and he also, by all accounts, probably had some kind of mental disorder. If you've ever seen A Beautiful Mind, the movie about that mathematician who's like crazy, that was basically my dad. Literally, my dad was a crazy mathematician. So there was a lot of stress, a lot of fighting, a lot of conflict, and depression. And so in my mom's middle-aged, 40, 50, there were some bouts of depression, obvious anxiety, like really strong anxiety and nervousness, and then the forgetfulness started kicking in. And I just wrote it off as, it's normal aging, stop complaining, like there's solutions to this stuff, just use a planner, take notes, structure your life better. And she would complain that she didn't have the brain power to even do those things. And at some point, she ended up on antidepressant medication, and my brother really has a lot more faith in the medical system than I do, and really pushed to try different antidepressants, I think, in trying to basically restore the mom that he once had. And some of the antidepressants would help in some ways, but they'd also like really make things worse. Some antidepressants made her extremely anxious, extremely panicky, extremely forgetful. You're stirring chemicals in the brain. So things happen that you don't anticipate. And it just went on like that for years. My brother lived near her. She moved to be near him, and he would try to check in on her, and went through the frustrations of dealing with her anxiety and depression, and kept trying to get her on medication that would keep her happy, but it's hard to say whether those really worked. And of course, she like me, always wanted to be off of drugs, didn't want to be on drugs, didn't like how drugs felt. And so she would get off of them, but then, she had it was like a lifetime of struggle with my dad, and just, all kinds of anxiety. And anyway, it started to get pretty bad, I think, in her 60s, and then by her late 60s, she was complaining about it a lot. And then, once she hit her 70s, she was really complaining about it a lot. But I just kept writing it off. And then COVID hit. And at that point, I already had a kid. And we were living in the Bay Area. My mom was living in Orange County. And COVID hit, and I was thinking, being alone in her condo, even though she lives close to my brother, like being alone in her condo with very little human contact for, however long lockdowns are going to last, like this isn't going to be good. And so I thought, I should bring my mom to live with us, because her brain's not going to get better in isolation. Her mental state's not going to be good if she's just stuck in her place by herself, scrolling on her phone or watching TV. Like, she needs to be around, me, her grandson, her daughter-in-law, just around people. And so I got her from Orange County. I flew down in the middle of the pandemic, flew her back up, brought her to live with us, and we basically tapered her off of any brain medications. And she had flashes. She would tell me she was having flashes of feeling like things were real again. She was participating as part of our family. Like, she would cook breakfast sometimes. Like, when she was living by herself, there was no purpose for her, it seemed like. She's just kind of wandering through her own her own condo. And I just always had this sense, like, if that were me, even if I'm, healthy and young or whatever, Like if I'm just living in isolation by myself, I'm gonna go crazy. Like my mind's gonna fall apart. If I'm not doing anything for anybody else, like well, how is my whole spirit supposed, my spirit, my body, everything, how is it supposed to keep working? And so as part of our family, she was, cooking and like kind of reliving the purpose that she had when she was a mother. And she was saying it just felt good. It really felt good. And she would have these moments like, I feel like I'm waking up from a dream. And she kept asking me, is it possible? Can I be getting better? And I kept telling her, yeah, Ma, like, of course, like, we're not, yeah, I mean, we're giving you a chance to be human again, right? To be around us and to act, to have a purpose. But, the history, right? The history of being adults in conflict with each other was so difficult. And also, I still had this thought in my mind that if we did things right, her brain was going to get better. Maybe not 100%, but at least better. And I also had this feeling that a lot of times the things she would say, she'd ask questions, almost like kind of small talky questions. I'd always feel like they were out of nervousness and anxiety, and she didn't like the silence. And it really annoyed me because I kept thinking like, I'm your son. You can relax. You don't have to always fill the silence. And then she'd ask, it's all those same things that annoy me anyway, but I've seen even little children get annoyed when their mother just won't stop asking about a thing that the child can control. Right? Are you cold? Are you cold? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you cold? Do you want some food? No, I'm not hungry. Please, are you sure? Do you want some fruit? Can I cut you some fruit? Always these, in hindsight, obviously, like ways to show you care, but that just can feel overbearing. And so those things, like to me, I was always feeling like, stop asking me these things because it's like you're questioning my competence. Like I can handle myself. But in hindsight, I see those things differently. But it took me time to see those things differently. I luckily understood those things differently before she died, but coming to understand it was very difficult. In any case, living with us in the Bay Area, she didn't like it so much. Like she loved being around her grandson, but she didn't like the weather. Where we were, it was cold and foggy and windy all the time. And she was used to Orange County, sunny all the time weather. And she had a friend in her condo complex that was Chinese, and she could always, go walk around with her, and she missed that. And my area didn't feel that great to walk around. It was just always cold and windy, and I was stressed out with my mom. I'd help her work out. We'd have her exercise twice a week. She got physically stronger. It was very clear. And it helped her mood, but nothing could stabilize what was happening to her brain. And nothing that I had the ability to control. And so, there were times where I'd get angry and just so, like I couldn't stand, she's asking me this question again, or she's pretending to forget this, or she did this thing that made no sense. She did something that like wake up the baby or something, didn't understand, like, because she was afraid about she'd have kind of irrational fears about things and then do things that would then irritate. And then helping her with her phone because she couldn't figure out how to use her phone. The phone's throwing errors. And by the way, like that whole experience, like dealing with smartphones for somebody who's elderly, somebody who has dementia, I really wanted to just find a regular phone, but it's amazing how difficult it is to find the right kind of phone for an older person, and find a phone that doesn't kick up errors and weird navigation issues all the time. So anyway, it started to become a lot, and I wanted to move my family away from this cold place that we were in. And so when we moved, we found a place to move to, and when the time came to prepare for the move, we moved my mom back to her condo in Orange County near my brother because she wanted to be there, and it was going to be a good rest for us. And I also felt like I just couldn't see it working for her to be with us and to have me stressed out all the time, constantly feeling like attacked, and yeah, I don't know what to call it. But eventually we moved, and she was back in her condo, and she came to visit the new home. And I remember when she was there, like before she arrived, I was, inside I was hoping when she arrived at my home, she would say, "Wow, like I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for this beautiful home, for having this beautiful family," and when she came, she came and she said, "Oh, I've been here before, right?" And I remember being so mad and saying, like, no, you haven't been here. She's like, no, I've been here before. And there are books on dementia that talk about this, and I don't think I had read them by this point. But I just, I was like, no, like, don't be stupid. You haven't been here. I just moved into this house. Like, you've never been here. And then she just went quiet. And anyway, so the same kind of like mean, disrespectful tone that I had, this like argumentative, combative tone I had, persisted. I just didn't understand. I was just like, how do we get her? I still had this feeling like a lot of this is just her nervousness, her anxiety. And I guess on her brother's end, he thought so much of it as just depression, whatever. So after her visit, after a few days visiting with us, and again, I was searching for places that she might be able to live near us, or trying to think of how she could be with us. But even in that visit, I was just seeing like I don't know, there's no way, I don't see how it could work for her to live with us. There would be so many safety concerns, and just the way she navigated the house with some stairs everywhere, the stove, just different potential safety issues with her in the house. Even just the idea of leaving her alone just didn't feel safe. Like if we wanted to go on a family outing, leaving her in the house alone wasn't going to be okay. Like if I just wanted to take my kid and my wife somewhere, like we would have to have somebody watching my mom, because her memory, her function, it was mostly okay, but sometimes not. I don't think it was going to be good. And so back at her condo, my brother had found a helper who could visit with her and be with her for a lot of the day. So that arrangement was working a lot better. Somebody who was young, had energy, was wonderful, and spoke Chinese and could really attend to my mom. So that was a clearly better situation. So anyway, at the end of her visit, I was going to drive her home, so I had her get in my car. It was in the afternoon, just a little before sunset. And if you don't know, there's a thing called Sundowning, which I didn't know about Sundowning is basically just a phenomenon that people have observed, that when someone with dementia will have their symptoms get worse as the sun goes down, as you get to like the late afternoon, sundown, like more things start to go haywire. Their focus isn't as good, their memory gets even worse. So I was, I got her into the car, and within 20 seconds she's asking me where we're going, and I said, oh, we're gonna drive to your home. I'm taking you home. And she said, oh, okay, are you taking the 101 north? And I said, no, we're taking the 101 south. She's like, oh, south. Okay. And I live reasonably close to the freeway, and so we get on the freeway, and she's like, oh, okay, 101 south. And then we drive for maybe a minute, 2 minutes, and then she asked me again, where are we going? And I said, we're going to your home. And she said, oh. Are we taking the 101 north? And I said, no, we're taking the 101 south. Oh. And then we drove for another minute or two, and then she asked me again, why are we going on a trip? And so this was the moment I realized that my mom's brain was really going. Because up to that point, I had this thought, like, have her exercise, have her interact, have her eat right. Maybe we can get ahead of this. And it wasn't, at that moment, I realized how far it actually was, how far it had gone. That, the questions, they weren't just out of nervousness. The questions weren't because she was trying to make small talk or whatever. She actually couldn't remember, even for a minute. Sometimes 30 seconds, she couldn't remember where we were going, what we were doing. And I just fully struck me. Oh, she doesn't remember. She really doesn't remember. And I realized how scary that could be, to be heard, to not remember from moment to moment. I realized how terrible it could be for her to not remember having asked a question 5 times already, to have asked the question anew, and then to get a response from her son of such anger and frustration. And I realized that the only thing I could do was try to be as nice to my mom as possible, to put on a brave face, to be reassuring to her, not let her see me cry, not let her worry, because she didn't even remember what was happening to her own mind. And so I grabbed her hand, I held her hand, and I told her, yeah, we're going back to your home. We're driving on the 101 South. We'll be to your home soon. And every time she asked, I just kept telling her where we were going. We're driving from my place to hers. We passed through my childhood towns, and so for about 2 hours, she doesn't really recognize anything. She's asking me all these questions. Where are we going? Why are we going? And as we start passing through the place that we spent, she lived there 30 years. I lived there for about 20 years. And she started seeing those freeway signs, and she started thinking, well, I feel like I recognize this place. And inside of me, there was this, I don't know, this warm feeling of, I hope this is giving her some comfort. Like this, she's recognizing things. It's kindling something in her mind, and she's seeing the signs, and she's saying like, oh, I recognize this place. I recognize this place. She sees some of the signs that she would have seen commuting every day. She's like, I remember this. Can you remember me this? Can you remember me this? And I was just like, you want me to get off? She said, yeah, please, go. So she was so excited. It was almost, I can't describe it. It was almost like a little girl coming back to life. And so I got out, I exited. I knew the way to her office. It was really easy. I'd done it so many times before we exited, made a turn. And she used to work at this giant defense contractor. And so it's a huge campus, big office building, huge parking lot. I remember it. I had to go there so many times as a kid. And then I was thinking, what will happen when she sees this giant monolith, that she used to go to every day? How will she feel? Will it ground her? Will it revive some memory in her? What will it do? And so, we make the turn, and I look as we're coming to it. In the parking lot, it's not what it was. There's this chain link fence that goes around the whole parking lot. This huge campus. It's just chain link fence around it. The asphalt has weeds growing out of cracks and fissures that are spread out like a spider web. The whole thing has just been abandoned. And it's just rotting in the sun. And my mom saw it, and I thought, my God, like what will this do to her to see this? She just said, oh, that's strange. It looks so different. And I said, yeah, it really does. It's really different. So we kept on driving. And I took her home, and my brother eventually, when it was no longer tenable for her to live in her own condo, with the aide coming to visit her, my brother found a 24-hour kind of care place where it's like a small house with a few other residents, and they just always had aides around making their meals and just attending to them. And my brother wanted me to go visit my mom and check it out, right? Like, I obviously wanted to check it out, but my brother wanted me to approve the place. And, but my mom was already there, and I just said, the choice is made. We can't move her, unless it's really bad. But I'm sure you picked something that's gonna work. They had some aides who spoke some Chinese, so we thought that would be, that would be a good thing. So I remember by that time I had read a book. I think it was called The 36-Hour Day, and it's a book about dementia. And I recommend reading it if you're going through something like this. And it basically said, one of the hardest things you have to do for your loved ones when they have dementia is learn to tell them lies, just to keep things moving smoothly and to keep them emotionally, I don't know if stable is the right word, but to help them live a happier life that doesn't have fear and anxiety in it. And the manager of the house, when I met him, he basically told me, just be, try to be smiling the whole time so she feels good. Right now, it was early days. I think it was maybe her first week. He said, right now, she might still be asking about when she's gonna leave, and you can just, let her know, like, oh, we'll talk about it soon, and we'll, this is just temporary, just to let her feel a little safer, so she doesn't feel trapped, right? And I just remember thinking, my God, like, I have to lie because I love you, and it feels so wrong, but to be honest with you, feels like it would be so much worse and would cause you more pain. And so that first visit, she wasn't really expecting me, because I even if they had told her that I was coming, she would have forgotten. And anyway, they put me in the bedroom, and then they had my mom come in, and we were talking, and I was trying so hard not to cry. And, my mom was so happy to see me, but obviously confused and disoriented. And I just remember one of the questions she asked me was like, when I leave here, I don't have to go back to the north where it's cold, do I? Like, you mean to San Francisco? She's like, yeah, it's so cold. And I said, no, Mom, you won't have to go back where it's cold. It's okay. So, she was so happy to see me, but it's just such a strange interaction to see how little of my mom was left. See how much had changed, to see how her ability to deal with the complexity of reality was so gone. She was smart. She was a smart woman in her prime, but seeing how she was making sense of the world now, it's hard. And I realized, I have to keep lying to my mom to try to help her be comfortable, to feel safe. I even wrote this whole poem to my mom, and about this whole part. It just ripped me up. But in any case, there was a doctor involved in my mom's care who never saw her in person. geriatric specialist, and he would just see her on video calls when my brother or somebody would hold the phone or something. And if there's one person I think deserves villainhood, it's this guy. But I'm sure he was trying his best. But my brother was still trying to find chemical solutions for her brain to try to help with what he thought was maybe it's just depression still. And the doctor, ended up prescribing some drug. I don't even remember what it was. I was just against all these things because there's no drug that cures dementia. Even the latest drug that they released in the last year or two that supposedly treats dementia, it doesn't even beat placebo, right? So, and even though the scientific committees that looked at it said don't release this to the public, but they still did. Anyway, this doctor, a geriatric specialist, put my mom on some drug. And then after about a week, she couldn't get out of bed. Literally couldn't get out of bed. She was too weak to get out of bed. And I was on the phone with the house manager, is she dying? What is going on? My brother got on the phone with the doctor. The doctor said, "Oh, well, this is actually a pretty common side effect of that drug. If you dose it too high, it can be basically paralyzing, the person can't move for a little bit." And we're like, what's the solution, right? So the solution is you just stop giving them the drug, and it takes a week or two for the effect to wear off. And I was livid because I know how quickly muscle disappears. And when my mom was with me, when she first started living with me, she had lost a lot of muscle, but when she was living with me, exercising twice a week for a couple months, she got very noticeably stronger. She got muscle again, and I just thought, you gotta be kidding me! You're leaving her in bed for 2 or 3 weeks. How is this an acceptable risk? She's not gonna be able to walk anymore. Are we going to put her on physical therapy or whatever? And the doctor was like, "Oh, well, yeah, we'll see. But she should be fine." And, when the drugs finally wore off and she was able to move again, she lost all her muscle. Her legs and arms were just bone. And there's no bringing that back. At that point, the only thing that we could have maybe done is have me go and live there and try to exercise with her, but her coordination was so bad at that point. And I just thought, that was it. That was it. This doctor made this decision, this cavalier decision of the side effect is essentially paralysis. Somebody in their 70s, they're not going to lose basically all their muscle mass from being stuck in bed. And so, that was just another... There was another incident with that doctor that torched any faith I had in modern medicine to effectively help people dealing with aging and the specter of dying. But anyway, paralyzing my mother was pretty much, that was it. That was the last straw. So after that, she wasn't really able to walk much. She could only walk, maybe half a block. And that was all she could do. And so I was working to get her affairs in order. I'd visit her with my son and my wife, and just so she could see my son and have some time with her grandson. And at some point I had I had to get her to sign documents, get her signature. And we had a notary come and do all these things, and it was so painful to watch. My mom couldn't sign things very well. Like, her coordination had gotten so bad, no muscle anywhere anymore. And she tried to sign her signature, and she used to have this, I would say it was a gorgeous signature. It was just very well proportioned. It was a really nice, sharp signature. And, if you grew up Chinese, you learn how to write things well. I grew up in America, my handwriting's turned to crap, but if you grew up Chinese, you gotta actually learn to write things with good proportions and nice strokes. And my mom's signature was really good. She had great writing. And then she had to sign this paper. And my mom started crying because she could see, and she just started crying. It's like, what's happened? What's happened? But she kept losing her memory. Got worse and worse. But the thing that I feared the most was that she would forget who I was. She might forget who Connor was. Might forget who my brother was. But we were spared that. That never happened. She always remembered us. But on one of the visits, when I was talking with her, I was showing her some pictures, and she said that she couldn't remember what my dad looked like. She hadn't seen him in a long time, actually, maybe decades, more than a decade, because they no longer lived together, because he was in many ways insufferable. So she told me she couldn't remember what he looked like. What was he like? And I didn't want to go into their combative history. I'm hearing something in the grass right here, making sure it's not a snake or coyote. And she wanted to know what he was like, and it's just like, he looked a lot like me. Like, when you look at pictures of me and pictures of him at similar ages, like there's on his wedding day, looking at a picture of him on the wedding day from the side, I looked at that picture once and I was like, oh my God, like, what is going on? So I told her, he looked like me. And she said, oh, wow, I must have had a very handsome husband. I was so lucky. And so I was grateful that she actually had forgotten all of this negative history. And as we progressed towards the end, I just remember, like, all of the negative stuff, all the anxieties that she had had, they were melting away as her memory was leaving. But what was clear always was that she loved me and loved my family. And, it got to a point where, I love you, I'm here. Those were the most important words, and maybe the only words we could say to each other that made much sense. And so, looking back, I remember feeling annoyed when my mom would before all this, when my mom would like stare at me and say, oh, I love you, or, fill silences with these presentations of care, right? Just be like, leave me alone. Thinking that these things were all nervousness or anxiety, and then as I was losing all those other pieces of my mom, just seeing that at the root was, I love you. it was really hard to come to the realization that I could misunderstand so much. And also now with my own son, I can see exactly why she, would stare at me sometimes, because I want to stare at my son sometimes too. And just smile at him. So, if you are somebody who's losing a parent to dementia, I don't know what your journey is going to be like. I know with my dad, who also had dementia, the journey was different. Not nearly so painful, but it was a different relationship and a whole, a different set of events with different expectations. But it can be really painful. And, talking to the manager at my mom's residence and then the manager at my father's residence before he died, some of the wisdom I got was, that sometimes the dementia can be a blessing. It can turn mean, rotten bastards into nice people. It can help people forget some real painful things. And, for a lot of years, my mom would beg and pray, literally pray to God to take her away. Because she didn't like this feeling of losing her memory. She didn't like losing all this function. She just preferred to die. And there was a Chinese proverb my dad once shared with me too that said, "You live too long, you die with no dignity." And so I respected that. My mom she just wanted to die, and I thought, wow, like in the end, to lose all the negative memories and to retain the core piece of I love you, and to know your family, know your children, to know that they're there. I guess it's not such a terrible death. I do know that I want to structure my life to try to keep my brain as healthy as possible, my body as healthy as possible, because I don't ever want to put my own child through this. So I think that's all I wanted to share in this video. I have no idea how long this went, but if you're out there and you're slowly losing a parent to this disease, you're not alone. I really encourage you to find resources. If you know of resources, share them please in the comments. Check out that 36-hour day book. And if you can find a support group of some kind, even just to go once or talk to somebody just a little bit, it can be really helpful. I know going to a grief counseling group before and after my mom died for a little bit definitely was helpful. It's definitely helpful to hear and know that that death happens. That death can happen in this way. And that in some ways it can be a blessing, and in many ways it will be a very difficult challenge. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Good luck. How did I get over here?